We're EarthForce. We are a national nonprofit and the home of environmental action civics. In field chats, you'll hear research-based, actionable tips and inspiring stories of youth-adult partnerships that empower young people to become environmental decision makers. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Field Chats, Environmental Action Civics Essentials, brought to you by EarthForce. Today we're talking about joy. During our last evaluation period, we recently received many responses that referred to educators increasing their joy of teaching using the EAC process. I'm Taylor, I'm program manager with EarthForce. I'm co-hosting with my fellow program manager, SJ, and we're here today because we have the privilege of working with practitioners and educators that use the EAC process with their young folks. We work directly with them. We kind of sometimes go into their classroom and work with their students. So we kind of have a unique perspective and are fortunate to that proximity and kind of enjoying and engaging in that experience process with them. So today we've kind of got 3 levels of joy. We're going to be talking about the joy of young folks utilizing the process, the educators, and then the community at large. So Sarah, do you mind kind of kicking us off with some thoughts that young people?
Yeah, I'm really joyful to be having this conversation with you today, Taylor. I love, in the organization, Taylor and I get to work directly with educators, directly with students, and therefore directly with the communities that they work for or work with. And so we have some stories we can share and just really want to highlight how environmental action civics brings so much joy to students, to educators, and to the community. So let's start with the joy it brings young people. And I've seen this firsthand the past couple of years throughout the Caring for Our Watersheds Challenge across the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is a big chunk of where I focus my work. I was asking young people towards the end of the process, what did you learn about yourself? What advice would you give other people who want to make a change in their community? And how does it feel to make a change? And you just see such smiles come over their faces. I mean, their whole demeanor changes, right? They're not presenting on here's our issue and here's our action and here's the ways that we need adults to work with us. They're more relaxed, they're more confident, and they're really reflective. And so there's so much joy, I think, in just stopping and pausing and providing that opportunity for young people to really just sit in what they're creating and take some time to let that just wash over them. Young people love working with other young people, right? Peer to peer. This is very developmentally appropriate, especially for middle school. And I mean, it's appropriate. It never stops being appropriate, but it's a really big need for young people to feel like there's a community, to feel like they're welcomed. And so this process inherently gives them an opportunity to work alongside their peers and to be a leader, which they don't get. Young people don't get many opportunities to be seen as leaders and to actually lead like a space with their friends, with their peers. So there's so much joy just inherent in that structure.
Yeah. And I think that, the connectivity, working together kind of fosters that. It's like you can feel that warm fuzzy when you feel like this collective goal and mission to create a positive change in your community. That's kind of the best part. And so since they are leading the process in EAC, kind of is inherent in that. And one thing that I've heard from educators about their students is kind of it allows them to address like some of those skill deficits in a unique way. So they have, a large class, some students are into it, some students are not. And given the process of kind of sharing that responsibility and that decision making kind of allows those folks or those young folks to kind of get more engaged, that like, oh, I can do this. This is something I can do. Or it allows them to play into their strengths that they already have, especially depending on who is teaching, if it's in the classroom or in another like youth program, kind of being a unique way of allowing to draw and elevate those strengths and then being able to show that and like, oh, I'm good at this. You are good at this. Let's do this together. So I think, I look forward to hearing more this challenge season. I think that's kind of where a lot of that experience comes out. So in the spring, we'll have a lot of really great stories as it relates to that. And so it kind of touches on educators seeing the joy in their students, but then kind of transitioning to more of kind of seeing what that joy means for those educators that are actually executing the process. So Sarah, can you give me something to work with?
Yeah. So moving from the perspective of young people, maybe from their educators and from our perspectives and the other folks that they work with, to educators, and the joy that environmental action civics brings to their classrooms. Um, you know, teachers, educators are not going into the field other than the fact that they love working with young people, and they want to see young people succeed and find their passions and set them up for, success, whatever that means to that young person. So this opportunity for young people to work in the community, to work side by side with their educators, so they're, the educator is more of a guide on the side, is really daunting. And it's like, as an educator, you have to give up kind of a lot of control. I've described it as controlled chaos when folks came into my room. But you can just kind of sit back, and I've had this feeling as an educator, and I see it in the teachers I work with now, where they're like, these kids are doing it, like you set them all up with like thinking routines and structures and scaffolds and responsibilities and roles, and they're in committees, and they are leading the way. There's nothing better than that as an educator. And most educators out here listening right now know that feeling when it comes to the spring, and they're like, okay, get into your small groups, do this, do that. It's way less of that direct instruction that's needed. And so for educators to take on this process, especially if you're practicing it and starting earlier in the year, it's going to set them up to be more independent. It's going to be less work for you as an educator and more of an opportunity for you to work one-on-one and just like help them to dig deeper into their strengths. That's a huge joy, is seeing kids in their element and seeing them come out of their shells and show off their skills and their strength in ways you may not have seen them before, because it wasn't student led.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of joy that it brings. You can see a smile if you're watching right now, how much joy this process brings as an educator who's done this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were kind of mentioning something like we talked about opportunity for young people and them experiencing the joy of having that opportunity, but then those educators being able to see those young folks take the opportunity and run with it and just kind of see that surprise and see that shine. So it's kind of like, as you set that table and then they come to that table and you see them just kind of thrive with all those things, is really fun to see. I think when you're like, whoa, you're actually doing it. And yeah, the controlled chaos, I think it's like taking away that perfectionism and that idea that it has to be perfect is very helpful, because I think that is how most things get done, especially when you're trying to achieve some element of sustainable community action or change, that you kind of have challenges or barriers or things that you face together. So like when you have educators and young people, kind of that youth adult partnership union coming together, like, oh, let's work together to overcome this challenge that we might have to do in order to achieve our goals. And maybe you do or maybe you don't accomplish that. But I think it is really fun when you get to sit back and watch those young folks take that opportunity and really run with it. And it is really, really great to see.
And maybe think of one thing when you're talking, Taylor, is I've heard from a lot of teachers, especially since COVID, it just like apathy being honestly like a barrier and a challenge to do any type of teaching. And I think what this process does, right, inviting young people to take action on an issue that they care about in their community, and it be rooted in real world problem solving, it's authentic, it's meaningful. There's no room to be apathetic, right? It's like you're going to choose an issue you care about that is related to part of your lived experience. And so, yeah, I think in the whole process of this, they're going to be motivated, and hopefully if there's enough student driven processes in that, they're going to stay motivated. So you're skirting around that apathy that a lot of educators are experiencing right now with students.
Yeah, because a lot of the challenges are very complex and a little bit overwhelming. And I think it's good when you have the collective. So you've got your peers, you've got your practitioner, whoever you may be, working together. And then throughout the process, you hit that step 3, and then you're engaging those larger community members or resource experts. And I get to work with a lot of those folks here in Colorado, because I think, last year was about 40 plus different community organizations, from nonprofit, local and state agencies, either government, a lot of them natural resource based, but really kind of excited about the idea of getting to work with young folks on the projects that they're working on. So it's kind of a lot of the work in Colorado is around natural hazards. And so when those community members or community organizations get the call or get the email, there typically is a lot of excitement, because it's like, well, we're already working on this, and I'm glad to see that you're interested in this. So let's do more together. And so it's kind of building this network within the community to make that change. And like you're also saying, like, it's doing real things in and within those frameworks of the community. So it's kind of that application is really great. And I've heard nothing but roaring reviews of like, oh, it was amazing. I'm really impressed. These young folks are interested in these things, and they're asking me really great questions, and I'm really excited. So that's always been a really great part about that community joy. So it's like the collective element. It's like actual civic engagement, community, collective action really requires a lot of people. But when we give the opportunity to those young folks, it kind of really stokes the fire on some of those things. Because I also see a lot of organizations have the desire to work with young people. They're like, I really love that youth input, and just not knowing how to do it. And so when they're approached, they're really excited. Or when I approach them, they're really excited in those ways. So do you have any unique kind of community joy or even impact?
I was just thinking about, even from like as an educator, like taking students outside in your community to do like trash audits, or, flooding inventories, etc. Right. Like neighbors see you, people walking their dogs see you, they like see young people like doing something outside of the 4 walls of their classroom. And it like just connects, right? It's like that intergenerational connection. And it's that community element that I think a lot of us are lacking, right? And so like education happens outside of the 4 walls of our classroom. Like it needs to. We need our young people to be able to apply what they're learning, whether it is like physically outside the 4 walls, or we're like, you can do so much virtually now, which is amazing, right? Like Zooming community members in to classrooms and guest speakers. But just the fact that this learning is happening, it's greater than what's happening in these 4 walls. And so I think there's a lot of joy that the community gets in seeing young people working with folks outside of the school system, and doing that real world connection. I think a lot of adults are like, that's how I remember things, maybe, or that was my favorite part of learning, was connecting with folks outside of your teachers and your school admin, and connecting with parents and neighbors, and just kind of on the surrounding lands, and just thinking about, this is our collective space. How can we collectively care for it? So I think it inspires hope in other adults too, to maybe be a community partner, even if they don't see themselves as one from like an NGO or environmental ed perspective, but they could just be like someone who cares, who wants to partner with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on that. The knowing you're not alone can really bring
yeah.
Like, we've kind of been dancing around it, but like the sense of belonging and the sense of place and the sense of agency and confidence kind of pours into that overarching joy, for sure. So let's kind of let's bring it to a close.
Let's close out.
But yeah, I think one thing I wanted to really emphasize is that celebration and appreciation of student work, because you're giving them this opportunity and they're really running with it, but then also showing them that they're doing a great job, and that like, look at all the stuff that you've done from start to finish. So yeah, when you hit that step 6, making sure that you really lean into celebrating and appreciating student work, also allowing them to reflect on the experience, but as a practitioner, really kind of showing them and appreciating that, because it is a lot of work, kind of identifying all these things, doing all this research, engaging with that community. It brings joy, but then also at the end, once you may have finished your action, really making sure that you emphasize that celebration and appreciation.
Awesome. So it's been great to chat with you today, Taylor. Thank you for listening. Check out our show notes and the previous episodes. If you're new to Environmental Action Civics, let us know what you think over at earthforce.org/podcast. And don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks, y'all. Bye.